Hello and welcome to the QRX Professional Development Session. This is the first one on resumes. I'm Dr. Shannon Andrus here with the Denver Training Group, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and talking about that very important document that you will need now and going into the future throughout your careers, the resume. And we're going to go through, we have about an hour, might be a bit less. I'm going to hit high level, but some specific techniques and approaches and things to keep in mind as you build your resume, or if you have one done already, improve it. They should always be living documents that are changing and being customized to the particular job or opportunity you are looking for. So let's jump in and get started. As I said, I'm Dr. Shannon Andrus. I am a speaker and trainer with the Denver Training Group. I'm located here in the Denver area, and I talk mostly about written communication, about the English language, using it professionally. So this is a topic that I'm excited about because I spend a lot of my time thinking about what language can do for us and in what ways it can mess us up occasionally. So let's get into building an excellent resume. This is the first in a four-part series. So I will be with you for resumes and then next week, cover letters. And then my colleague, Carrie Knudsen, will be talking with you about networking and interviewing. And this graphic represents that those pieces are all connected. We need all of them. We need the written and the verbal. We need the more factual and then the interpersonal, sort of hard skills and soft skills. And then we bring it together to present you and what you've accomplished in the best possible way, hopefully get you an internship, get you that job. And these are skills, again, that you're going to use throughout your career, throughout your life. So I hope you'll find it very helpful. Our agenda today, we're talking about some big ideas, some overarching pieces of the resume and ways to approach it, things to keep in mind. Getting noticed, what makes you get in the no pile or what makes people gloss over and not get all of the info that you want to communicate to them on this one-page document. We'll talk about word choice, the language you use, what you should avoid, what you should do, formatting, and just those more specific pieces of putting together this document. So a few big ideas to start us off. Overarching is you can't unfortunately just make a resume and say, I'm good. I'm good until I get another job. I'm good for 5 years. A resume is something that has to be tailored because it's always, you don't just create it to hang on to it and hold it on your wall. You create a resume because you need to send it to someone, because you're looking to be a teaching assistant, because you want an internship, you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get into graduate school. You'll use this document in so many ways at this point in your career. It should be constantly evaluated, updated, changed, and tailored. I really like that word, for the job opportunity, the position, whatever it is that you are using it for, whoever that person is, that company, that position. It does take time and effort. As I like to say, getting a job is a job. You should go into this expecting it to take a fair amount of time. And of course, it's not just the resume. Hopefully, you can spend a few hours on that. You can craft it. You'll get some help and some feedback, ideally. But looking for job opportunities, reading about them, doing the networking pieces that Carrie will speak with you about. All of that takes time and takes work. But the good news is it pays off. That most people out there aren't going to put in the tons of time that it really takes to rise to the top. So if you're able and willing to put that extra time in, you have such a better chance of getting that position you're looking for and being really well positioned to have those opportunities. As I already said, it's a living document. So it's changing, it's being updated, it's being adjusted based on feedback you get, and especially based on what you're using it for. There are five big ideas that Carrie and I are going to discuss across these four sessions. And one of them is you have to personalize and you have to prepare. So just hold on to that. Know that you're personalizing what you're doing in your job search, your cover letter, your resume, your interview, all of it. And you have to prepare. You have to think of it as a job, hopefully just a part-time job, but it is a job to be looking for a job. Just a couple of terminology pieces. I didn't know this, I think, until long after college. What exactly is a CV? So just to be clear and get our terms straight, we're talking about resumes today. What's the difference between a resume and a CV? So a resume is ideally a one-page document that emphasizes your skills and what you can do. It's the most common document you're going to use to apply for jobs in industry, right? I want to go work at the library, I'm going to give them my resume. It shouldn't be longer than 2 pages. And ideally, especially at this point in your career, it should be 1 page. You shouldn't need a 2 page resume. There's lots of ways to get the most important information on 1 page. If it is going longer than that, there's probably some things you can cut out. Now, a CV, on the other hand, is used for academic accomplishments or accomplishments in the scientific field. So it's for academia, it's for the sciences, it's for fellowships, it's for grants, really those more sciences and then academia pieces. And the length, it could be super long. If you've written 47 academic papers and presented at, 52 conferences, you can list all of those and it will be as long as it needs to be. It would begin with education, and we're not going to talk about the formatting for a CV. That's not what the topic for today is. You may need a CV down the road. At this point, probably you don't quite need one unless you do have some conference presentations or academic papers. But even those can, of course, they can reside on your resume as well. It's just as you get more publications, as you are applying for grants and fellowships in research, that's when you may be asked for a CV. Now let's talk about the types of resumes. There's two main ones, but there are so many ways you can put them together, even beyond just these two main divisions. But the two main divisions are chronological in order of time or functional, having that function, what do I want to highlight? So the chronological is really going to usually be in reverse chronological order. And this may be a resume you're generally thinking of if you've looked at them or had to do one before. And so it would be your most recent job at the top and then going down backwards in time, right? So I've been in this position between, 2021 until present. And then I did this from 20 to 21. I did this from 15 to 20, right? And then the functional is more about, no, I'm going to highlight maybe my skills, maybe my education is going to be more prominent, what experience I have, particular. There's so many ways, and we're going to be looking at examples of ways that you can organize it. For all of you, probably a functional makes sense because I doubt you have a ton of job experience. You're still in college, you're still getting your degrees, and you may have some absolutely wonderful and applicable job experience or volunteer experience, and that will go on your resume, but it doesn't have to be preeminent, like here's just the work I did, boom, 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 boom. So I'm going to pull up a couple of examples. At the end of this presentation and on your handout, there are a list of resources. And I can't emphasize enough that you need to look at a lot of resumes as you're putting yours together, as you're changing it and crafting it and tailoring it. But we look at these I pulled from the University of Pennsylvania Career Center, which has some excellent examples. And education is predominant up here. We've got the contact information at the top. These are the same. I've just zoomed in a little so you can see it better. And you can see that education is near the top because this person is a student. That's very important. This may be important even 10 years down the road, but for certain, as you're a student, probably education is going to come first. You can put your expected graduation date if you know that, and that's on there. You don't need to put when you started. If there was a break, if you changed universities or colleges or types of higher ed or continuing education, and you have a start and stop date, you can put those in. But if you're just in one program, you can just put expected, spring 2025 or whatever it is. Should you put your GPA? That's up to you. If your GPA is very high, almost certainly you should put it. If you have honors and awards, you would put those in. Your major could absolutely be very important. If you have studied abroad, if you've done some extra programs, those can all, anything related to your university or college career can be under that education framework there. So this person has education and then has the professional experience and then has leadership experience. So that's another great term. If you are a leader on your campus or in your community or since high school or before, you want that relevant information. If you've created something, led a group, we're going to find ways to put everything that you have done and accomplished and learned and can bring to a job. We want to make sure it's reflected. We'll look at just a couple more examples. So this person, again, has education at the top, and you see they have that May 20, let's say 25 expected there, a study abroad. And then they go with skills, right? So again, that's what's most predominant for them. They have some research experience at their school probably, but maybe not a lot of employment experience. That's fine. If you're 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, an employer knows if they're looking at you for an internship or an entry level position. They don't expect you to have a ton of experience, but they want to know a ton of work experience, but they want to know what experience you have in terms of what you can bring, what you've learned, what you've spent your time doing. So this person went straight from education into skills, very specific computer skills, very specific laboratory skills. Then I think I've got one more here. So this is, say, someone who's in nursing. Again, education at the top. This is a student. And then she's put in selected health related experience. So this is, senior leadership, clinical, general pediatrics. So that's maybe coursework, something related to her schooling that she's put in. She's acted as an assistant. She's been an intern, and then maybe she also was a volunteer in high school at the pediatric hospital. Maybe she's worked as a vet tech, and that was her part-time job over the summers. Anything related to say, I've worked in a healthcare field could fall into that. So the main thing I want you to take away from this is get creative. Think about everything you could bring that you may want on your resume. And you may even want to literally put it on index cards and then move it and shift it around. Oh, I could lump this under leadership experience. This could go under skills. It doesn't have to be so locked into, well, I need my work experience and then, I've got skills or accomplishments. Those can move around and be presented in different ways, can be lumped together thematically in a lot of different ways. All right, so speaking of that and having these different sections, these are the main, most common sections that a resume will have. I'm gonna have at the top here the summary or objective or goals or job target. There's probably a handful of other terms people will put, but it's a couple of lines. I hesitate to even call it a mini paragraph. It might be a single line, a few lines that says, basically, this is what I'm looking for. This is what this resume is about. You do not have to have it. The three examples I just showed you did not have it. There's pros and cons. It's a good way to tailor to the position you're looking for, right? That's a place where you can really write out, I am looking for an internship that will gain me these types of skills and use my experience doing this, in a maximal way or whatever it may be. So it could have a lot of different titles if you do choose to include that. Of course, you'll include your education. And again, study abroad programs or being a TA might be in there, awards, accomplishments, your GPA, getting on Dean's List, all sorts of things related to education could be under that. Experience can be work experience, can be volunteer experience, qualifications and skills. So you can see how you might not have all of these because something could be under a qualification or a skill, but it might just show up under experience. I have experience working in this program or I have a skill in this program. Achievements, accomplishments, again, could be in education, could be its own section. You might have achievement of being an Eagle Scout and also an achievement of making Dean's List. So again, you kind of have to look across what have you got, what do you want to put in there, and then you sort it in the best way. Your contact information should be on there, of course. It's generally at the top. It can be across a line at the bottom. Again, hopefully as you do this, you're going to go look at a bunch of examples. I don't feel that you need to put a street address. If you have a campus address, you may want to include that. You may or may not need it when you fill out an application. There will probably be a place for an address, but you want some sort of email address, whether it's your university one or just a professional Gmail address with your full name or something like that. You don't want, of course, any sort of email address that's too unprofessional. And then you can put, if you don't put your full address, you could put in, Boulder, Colorado or Denver, Colorado, and just put generally your city and state. So here's an example, just I wanted to include a career objective. So as I said, job target, objective, career objective, lots of different titles. But if you do include it, it will be right at the top there under your name and probably your contact info. So solutions-oriented professional eager to apply, recently completed accounting degree towards launching a successful career with an organization that will capitalize on accounting tax return, right? So this person is doing a couple of things there. They are laying out that I know who I'm applying to, what sort of job and, industry, job or company this is. And they're also having a chance to put in a lot of keywords. And we're going to talk about how computers are sorting for those keywords. Humans are doing it to some extent as well, but computers are definitely doing it. And they're going to be searching that resume for key terms. So you have this place where you can push a lot in that connect your experience, the type of job you want, the type of experience you have with what you're looking for. All right. So how to get noticed. You've created this resume. You want it to go to the top of the pile. You don't want it to be thrown out by an AI system or an individual. Well, a few suggestions for you. First of all, know that you do only have a few seconds. 7.4 on average is the statistic I found, that people read resumes for on average about 7.4 seconds. Once you get to an interview phase, people will probably be poring over it and looking at every line of it. But if it's just the initial, I've got a stack and I need to cut them down so I can figure out who to reach out to for the next step, you've only got a few seconds. About half are rejected by that computer, by that AI, before they even get to a human who spends that 7.4 seconds. The text must be appealing. You don't want it to be an off-putting or strange font. You don't want it to be your margins to be uneven, no white space at all. You don't want it to just be so packed that it looks just overwhelming. They're not going to be able to pick out the important information if you do that. I'm going to talk about something called the F of attention and how to make it more appealing and more beneficial to you on the page. And then this is important about the language you use. You have to think of a resume as a chance for you to show what you can bring to the organization. And that's why, again, it comes back to that tailoring, that you know exactly what this field is. You know what this job is. You know what they need. And yes, you want to present, I have these qualifications, I have this experience, but what will that allow, you to bring to them? How will it benefit them to hire you? So keep that in mind when you're writing your resume, your cover letter, preparing for an interview, all of the steps, networking as well. What can you bring? How does it benefit them to spend a little more time on you, to hire you? And editing. I can't say this enough. Again, I have been teaching English for years and years. This is what I do. I speak and train on written language, and editing is so key. I certainly have to edit myself, even though this is what I do professionally. Super easy to have typos or things left out. A rule you didn't know was a rule. So you need to edit yourself. You need to ask others for help. You need other people's eyes on it. And again, just editing well is going to take you up in the stack, because unfortunately, most people, or perhaps fortunately for you, but most people don't spend this time. They don't treat finding a job as a job. They don't spend that extra time. They make a resume in one go. It's good to go. They leave it alone. So if you're the person who's spending that extra time and say, no, I'm going to pour over the website of this company I want to work for, and I'm going to go back to my resume and I'm going to edit and change out words and really think of highlighting these skills. I'm going to have someone else look for it. I'm going to bring it to my career center. That pays off. I can't emphasize that enough. That is going to take you from wherever you are in that metaphorical stack to higher up in it. And so this is our second of our big 5 takeaways. Don't make it easy for them to say no. And what I mean by that is, if I've got a stack, I need to hire one person and I have a stack of 150 resumes. That's tough. If you've ever had to make a decision about hiring someone or awarding something or making a choice of any type, really, where you just have an overwhelming number of applicants or entries or decisions to make, you're looking for ways to cut them out, right? So if I have this stack of resumes and I pick up the first one and I see that something's misspelled, or that they reference a different company and it's obvious they didn't update something, right? Or if it just looks terrible on the page or runs off with 2 lines on another page that I then have to flip over, that's going to make it easy for me. Like, nope, not that one. Thank goodness I have an easy way. This person didn't even edit it. I'm going to tell you, no, this person didn't, this doesn't even sound like the job we're looking for. Nope. So you don't make it easy for them to say no. You put that work in, you get noticed, and then they're going to spend that time. Now, speaking of formatting, this is again in your handout. So go back, take a look at this when you're working on your resume. You should be able to keep everything on one page, unless there's some extreme extenuating circumstance. The goal is to have it on one page. And you want some white space on there. So that's the trick of finding that balance of including everything you want to include, but not making it just a full page full of text that's tiny, tiny font that you can't see. Speaking of fonts, use a traditional, a professional font, whether it's Times New Roman or just one that's commonly used. With a 0.5 or a 1-inch margin, different guides to resumes will advise one or the other. I understand if you're using a 0.5, use it consistently all the way around. That'll look appealing on the page. If you can use a 1-inch and get everything in, that's great. But I think a half inch is fine. And then that 10, 11, or 12 point font, you might do some headings in 12 and then have your bullets slightly smaller, some of your information smaller. Don't go smaller than 10, don't go larger than 12 for sure. You're going to left align the content on that left side. You might right align as well your dates. It depends on how you're structuring the information. You want clear sections. So if it's education, experience, accomplishments, qualifications, right? Whichever sections you're having, those should be really apparent. If someone's holding it at arm's length, you can see whether it's in small caps or all caps, or it's a slightly larger font, or you have a line all the way across. Again, go look at 50 resumes, see which ones are visually appealing to you and which ones fit the sections or number of sections or amount of content you're hoping to put on the page. And then you'll use bullet points to give a bit more information about your work experience or volunteer experience or something else. And I'll give you a little bit more information about doing bullet points well. But before we do that, let me go back to this thing I mentioned that might have sounded a little strange, the F of attention. What is the F of attention? The F of attention is something you can use as you put things on the page, either a physical page or on the digital screen, that links into the way our brains work. And that's this. Our eyes, when we look at a screen or a page or something, tend to prefer things to the left side. This is true even in languages that read from right to left. So it seems like it has something more to do with maybe our occipital cortex or how we take information in, something about our brain we prefer, and we tend to look to the left more. So the left-hand side of your page or your screen is more prime real estate than the right. But that doesn't mean people only skim down the far left of a page. Certainly they look all the way across. And that's why I don't call it like the line of attention or the left side of attention. It's an F of an attention or an E of attention. It's some sort of line within legs or arms, whatever you want to call them, going across. So there's roughly, if you squint, and if you squint right now and look at this screen again, do you see how it's like very roughly, but it's roughly this F shape. So this is by the Nielsen Norman Group. There are many companies that do this type of research on how we read and skim, in particular, where our eyes linger. So these dark red areas, that's where people really spend a lot of time. We've got the orange going into the yellow, and then the blue is like barely skimmed at all. So what does this mean for you? It means keep important information to the left, to the top, but then also have those nice clear headings because people will look all the way across. Their attention will come back in. It's not that every important word has to be to the left, but just in general, know to organize that and to keep those important words front loaded at the beginning of a sentence, the beginning of a paragraph, at your first bullet. If that's the most important key feature of what you did, try to make it higher on the page. Try to keep it more to the left. Try to keep it the first bullet. Okay. You don't have to bend over backwards and like everything is only in this F shape. Of course not. But keep in mind that as they get further down the page, they're going to be skimming more in that light blue color of just skimming right over it. So we want to really keep that most important stuff up top. So again, for you, education is probably your most important. But if it's skills or leadership or this awesome internship that you already had, this work experience that's really impressive, well, you're going to want that to come right after education, if that's what you want to emphasize. Or if you have these skills and training and you can code and that's really applicable, that should come next. Just really be thinking about putting it on the page where people will see it. So let's look at an actual resume. So this is eye tracking software with how people look over a resume. So in this one, we still have the orange and yellow is where they spend more time. The green is a little bit less, and then there's just nothing. So if you look at these, it's not quite as much of an F as you see on the previous one, but if you squint, as I'm doing now, you can still see there's more green on the left-hand side. And you can see where they spent a little more time on that, the contact information and that top line, that header kind of goes into the yellow. And then that green is, there's a bit more of it. It's like, 60-40 in the top half of the resume, looking more to the left. And then as you get down to the bottom, look at that blank space. Look where there's no green at all. And there's whole sections there where this person, in those 7 seconds they spent looking at a resume, you may have agonized over the exact way to put in a line about what you did in a particular job. They may not even really read that, especially as it gets down to the bottom of the page. Now, again, those things are still very important, because when someone's interviewing you or making a decision about hiring you versus another person, they will look over the entire resume in more detail. But for that initial pass, know that top of the page to the left, have clear headlines, make it easy for them to skim and to pick out those important words. So just an overarching kind of a recap of layout on the page. Think of that F of attention. The top and the left are that most prime real estate. Less is usually more. You want to have some white spaces. You want to keep it to one page. You don't want to have 10 bullet points on one item. You don't want to have super long sentences. You want to cut enough so that just those most important terms are in there and it's not too cluttered. You're not trying to do 9-point font and just get everything you've ever done in. And then you'll decide what's most important. So what should be at the top? What heading, as you think about that left-hand side and what those heading titles are, you want to emphasize healthcare experience if you're going into something in healthcare, right? That's a great term for someone's eyes to light up on and say, wow, there's a whole section of healthcare. If you have quantum computing experience, if you have technical or laboratory experience, if you have computing, think about those terms that you want to jump out to the person reviewing your resume. All right, now we've decided, what we're going to include in our sections, and we're thinking about now actually writing it down. Be aware that an ATS, an applicant tracking system, is being used by about 95% is the figure I saw of Fortune 500 companies. And they're very common. They're being used, Indeed and Monster and all sorts of just, job posting sites. And then even more so internally, people are using these. So it comes back to, again, using the language that will get your resume through the door. And it is important to try to mirror, mimic, parrot, whatever you want to say, the exact language from the job application, the description. And so if it says, fluent in Spanish required, and you say, grew up in Barcelona speaking Spanish in the home, truly, even something like, you didn't say fluent in Spanish. We're like, well, yeah, but clearly I'm a native, or you say native Spanish speaker, right? You might put it in another way. Hopefully the AI is smart enough, but we know there's problems with that, where a human reading it would say, oh, wow, this person's a native speaker. You may not get it through. So you really want to think about those exact terms, those key words. And of course, we're not going to lie or embellish, but if you have those, oh, I do know that coding system. I do have experience doing this. I have worked in a lab, whatever it may be, make sure that language is in there. And then to go back again to what's in it for them, you want to think about what you've accomplished, what you have achieved, what you can offer them, not just that I've done something before. So you've achieved something, you've completed something, you've improved something. And we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about that exact language. It should have specifics, it should have action verbs, and then what you bring to them. I have a link here, and it's just IBM's Quantum Internship, which you may have already looked at. For this video today, I'm not going to go pull it up, but going to look over one and look at that language that's used, I think is an excellent exercise. And of course, I think you will be applying for internships and jobs and assistantships, whatever it may be. You should be poring over that. You should be reading it multiple times. You should be reading the links. They say, join us on LinkedIn, go join them on LinkedIn, that they wrote a blog post. As much information as you can gather. If they said, here's what last year's interns did, if you can use that language and show that you know about the job, about the company, about the individuals with whom you'd be working with, that is such a leg up in all of this and in all of the pieces. That's going to be useful in your cover letter, your networking, your interviewing, and then even once you get to the position, knowing that going in, knowing how you will fit with it, what you can bring, what you're going to learn from them. Go research as much as you can. Spend that time. All right, so to go back to the language, I said use action verbs. They're also called power verbs, and then specifics. So what you don't want is just to list in your work experience, or your volunteer experience, your leadership experience, just, was responsible for planning meetings, right? Try to use active or power verbs, and then the specifics. How many people were at these meetings? What did you do? What did you accomplish? Quantify it wherever you can. So instead of duties included, oh, here's just a list of things that were my job duties. You could write, I directed, and of course you drop the I, directed daily operations, scheduling, and job assignment for more than 200 production workers, engineers, right, with a $52 million poultry production facility. Sold and achieved sales goals. Okay, you had to sell things and you achieved your sales goals, right? I exceeded, that's a great verb, exceeded sales goals in these specific areas. Instead of telecommunication sales associate who achieved quota each month after training phase, successfully sold telecommunication services, achieving sales goals. So you see how you can just bump it up, amp it up a little bit. So I want you to go back to your resume if you already have one or as you're writing it and look for those places where you can put in perhaps a more powerful verb. You can put in some more specifics and then also use the resources around you. Ask, the people who are running this program, your career services at your school to take a look at it. Where can I give this, a little more oomph? And you're going to be putting this information in bullet points. So a few things about bullet points. Generally, 2 or 3 per topic is plenty. Don't do more than 5. I don't know that you'll even need 5. Perhaps if you've had this very complex job and it's evolved and you've done so many things with it, but probably just 2 or 3 descriptors of what you did will be enough. You want to keep them in the same format, a complete sentence or roughly the same length. So try to make them parallel as much as you can. And then you'll be consistent with periods, and I'll show you the periods rules in just a moment here. Okay, so with periods, I get this question all the time because I think it's something that's not taught. People see it inconsistently in lists and in emails and PowerPoint presentations. Like, how am I supposed to do it? So what you do with bulleted lists and periods is if you have a complete sentence, yes, you use a period, right? Items discussed at the board retreat, there was an increase in revenue. That's a complete sentence. I would want, if it's at all possible, I'm going to try to have all of my bullet points in the same format. So if the first one, it makes sense to write it as a complete sentence, I'm going to make sure my others are written as complete sentences as well. Sarah Smith, instead of just saying Sarah Smith, new CEO, I might have that in some bulleted list, but not this one because I'm doing complete sentences and I want them all to be complete sentences. So for sure, if you have a complete sentence as a item, you put a period. But you also put periods if you have an introductory stem and then your bullets completed. Please remember to complete your timesheets. That would be a complete sentence, period. Please remember to submit your receipts. Please remember to update your calendar. So again, I'm going to want to keep them in the same format, and then these would all have periods. Now, when you don't have them is when it's just like a list of items. Items on the agenda, timesheets, performance reviews, computer updates. Don't need periods then. I've literally seen people who speak about writing say, it's all over the place. Do what you want. No, there's rules. So, and again, consistency is key. And just thinking about, is it a complete sentence? Would it complete a sentence and be one, or is it not? That's just the rule. Okay. Only a few more things as we're thinking about our resume and presenting ourselves in the world. You send the resume, it has your name, it has your university, and you think, I am presenting myself. I've filled out an application, I'm sending in a resume, I've sent a cover letter. That's how they know me. But of course, we don't exist only in, the ways we put out there anymore. We have a social media and an internet presence. All of us do. Probably by the time we're 3 years old now, you have one. Certainly by the time you get to high school and then to college and out of college, you're going to exist online. On social media for sure. Even if you don't have social media, you probably have some degree of an online presence. So just a couple of reminders. employers do Google searches. One study I saw said 80% of them, you have to assume it's going to be done. So what's out there? What are they going to find? What would be great if they could find and be the first thing is your LinkedIn profile. And you're going to spend that time, and we're not going to talk about it today because that's not the purpose of this session, but there's all sorts of resources and YouTube videos, and your Career Center, I'm sure, could help you make a great LinkedIn profile that has, a picture that represents you professionally, that tells a little bit about you, that's a way for people to find you, gives that experience, whether it's work experience, volunteer experience, working at your university, whatever it is. So if you don't have a LinkedIn yet, go make one before you start applying. And then look online and especially at your social media and just take a look, see what's out there. If you haven't Googled yourself or haven't done it recently, go Google yourself as soon as this video is done. Ask your friends to Google you too, because Google, of course, knows it's you Googling yourself. They know who's using that, IP address. They know who's on that computer or that phone. So it's interesting to have someone else Google you, see what might come up, but also what they might notice, how far do they scroll, what do they see? So important, you may have a name that's very common and there's a bunch of people out there with your name. Not that you're going to do a whole lot about that right now, but if you do show up in some Facebook post, you're linked to some pictures with maybe some, behavior that doesn't look professional. There was a story just this past week about, oh, it was a high school student who had a scholarship from her school, I think, and she showed up in someone else's Facebook video and her principal took away her scholarship. I think it has been reinstated, but I believe it was a he, felt that she had, inappropriate behavior. You can go find the story if you want. But there's plenty of stories out there where people may not have even been doing anything wrong, but they may just be tagged in a photo that doesn't look great or professional. So spend a little time working on that. Probably things are fine in terms of what's out there about you. But again, that LinkedIn should be available and should look professional and have that information that you want to highlight on it. We don't want this. All right. So I mentioned, yes, you must edit, you must proofread. I love to still use the good old Nike swoosh. I don't know how old this logo is, but just do it. It's a good one. Proofread, just do it. I highly recommend you proofread everything. And when we talk about cover letters, I'll talk about editing well and the importance of it and ways to do it very well. But of course, you have to go over that resume with a fine-tooth comb. And if at all possible, ask someone else to help you, because our brains are really good at seeing what we want to see, what we think we wrote, what we know we mean, and really easy to miss something. I had to review resumes a couple of years ago for 2 different organizations within the same month or so. I read so many resumes and I kept seeing something like this. So, it's describing your job experience in 2021, led a team. Looks right, right? Wait a second. Lead, that's the element lead. Such an easy mistake for people to make, to write LEAD instead of LED. So that's a common resume one, but there's all sorts of other places where you might just have a typo or a name spelled wrong, or, a city, whatever it could be. Easy to miss stuff. So proofread carefully, ask someone else to help you as well. All right, so we have our big 5 for this skills series. The first 2 I touched on today. Don't make it easy for them to say no. Do your research, do your homework, do your proofreading, make that resume beautiful on the page, that you have come prepared, you are applying for a job, you understand what it takes, you understand what it's about, you want it, you're a good fit for it, you're bringing so much. If you can put yourself into that package, you are going to have such a better chance of getting that opportunity, whatever it is you're trying for. And you have to personalize and prepare it. So the resume, the networking, the cover letter, the interview, all of it, it has to be part of your job that you're spending that time preparing it. Now, the details matter. Having authenticity, avoiding the confidence trap, those are things we'll talk about more in the next few sessions, especially authenticity and the confidence trap with networking and interviewing, which again, Carrie Knudsen will be doing in a week or 2 when we have those 3rd and 4th sessions. Here are some helpful sites and links. And again, these are in the handout. Indeed.com has a great career guide, and they have a series of YouTube videos that I think are pretty good. So if you're looking for, this is a link to a scientist's resume, just for examples, suggestions, tips, and tricks. I think Indeed's doing a good job. Resume Pilots has many examples. The University of Colorado Career Center has great info. And if you are in Boulder, you can go there, or whichever college or university you are attending, they're going to have a career center. They're going to have people who I guarantee would be so happy to have you come in and to help you look over your resume. I liked MIT's and UPenn's examples of resumes. They have some great ones available online. So you can check out a book from the library, but you can also easily go online, find a bunch of examples, and again, find that balance of the job you're looking for, what you want to put on that resume, what experience do you have that you're trying to highlight, and then the way to format it, you'll find an example that fits that if you look through a bunch. So thank you. So this is session 1 about resumes. On the 24th and 25th, we'll be having a session on cover letters, which are so important and nobody likes to write them. I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you. And then on November 11th is the Professionals Day, and that's when I will be in person in Cary as well. So if you do want some help from me on your resume, you can bring it in. You can bring just your draft you're working on, and we can wordsmith it and look at perhaps what sections you should have, or wordsmithing, finding those active verbs for you. So thank you so much for participating, and good luck with everything. You can reach out to me at Shannon@wordnerdconsulting.com. I'm also on the Mobilize app, so you can send me a message through that. And good luck with those resumes.